The air is becoming increasingly polluted, and soon everyone will have to wear masks when going outside. Every home is even required to have an air filter. Amid this situation, there is a company called Athera that has developed a drug called AI Remedy. This drug allows someone to breathe without a mask for 6 hours, but it is incredibly expensive. Only the elite can afford it. In a dark, secretive laboratory, Solomon is recording a video explaining how Athera will eventually limit the distribution of AI Remedy. When that happens, people will be in a desperate state, and that's the moment Solomon has been planning to launch a new experiment. Solomon knows that increasing the dose of the compound he created could trigger a fatal immune response, but he believes it is a step that must be taken to save humanity. However, as Solomon is planning his next steps, he receives a warning message. The last green zone on Earth has also been contaminated. This means that within the next 18 months, 83% of the world's population will be at risk of exposure to deadly toxins. Solomon's close friend Spider realizes that their lab is being watched. To protect their research, Spider comes up with a clever idea, using the latest trend, a party liquid called blue, to dye their entire complex. That way, if the police catch them, they'll think they're just dealers, and the compound they created won't be discovered. Meanwhile, Ella works as a model for Athera, promoting their products. Her mother was also a model, but after her mother ended her own life, Ella took over her career. This has made other models hate Ella, labeling her a Nepo baby. Ella now keeps a highly valuable breathing drug in a locket inherited from her mother. During a work break, Ella receives a message from her boyfriend Tully, canceling their date because he's busy. Shortly after, Ella overhears other models talking about her behind her back, so she decides to call her best friend, Gina, and invite her out. However, Gina turns out to be with Tully because they are having an affair. Tully, feeling the urge to tell Ella the truth, remembered that it was the anniversary of his mother's death, so he had to wait for the right time. Meanwhile, Tully decided to visit a dealer and buy some supplies for a party. However, no one was supposed to know where he lived, so Tully used a tracking app to locate him. While waiting for the dealer to prepare his package, Tully sat in the waiting room and watched an interview on TV. On the other hand, Ella felt disappointed because Tully didn't pick her up as promised, so now she had to take the train. Even so, Gina invited her to a party, but Ella wasn't interested. After hanging up, Ella overheard a homeless man at the station saying that the toxic air was God's punishment for humanity's actions against the planet. Athera's head of research, Eric, was taking a call from an unknown caller. At first, the voice on the other end sounded normal, but soon it became distorted and identified itself as Lazarus. Lazarus started asking questions about the origins of the AI Remedy and doubted the company's ability to meet global demand. Eric felt uneasy with the questions and quickly ended the call. At the same time, Tully sneaked in and found the lab now dyed blue. Inside, Solomon and Spider were working hard. Tully observed closely as Solomon took a small sample and instantly relaxed afterward. Tully thought, this must be the new party hit, judging by his calm reaction. After Spider stored the compound in the fridge, Tully quietly moved to steal a bit of it. Tully then picked up his package from the dealer and left casually as if nothing had happened. However, the person watching Solomon started paying attention to Tully and Gina. After leaving the TV station, Eric received a call from the company's CEO, who was also his father. The board of directors was unhappy with the company's tarnished reputation caused by conspiracy theories. Eric was given a deadline to find a solution, or he would lose his job. Back at the lab, Eric tested a new drug on a rat, but the rat died within minutes. Frustrated, Eric punched the table, almost breaking his tablet, before his assistant, Angela, informed him that they had traced Lazarus's call to Luxembourg. Shortly after, Eric received a call from his son, Max, who contacted him secretly because his parents were divorced. Max shared that he had just given money to poor people on the streets, but Eric harshly scolded him, calling those people parasites. The call was suddenly interrupted by his ex-wife, who informed him that they would be moving to another city. Eric began to worry about his son's safety, as he was now in a red zone. At night, Ella returned home and saw a magazine cover featuring her mother and herself as a baby. Ella knew the industry only liked her because of her resemblance to her mother. Shortly after, her father called. He was stuck on another continent, trying to help the poor. Ella felt angry and disappointed, ending the call abruptly. However, loneliness quickly enveloped her, and Ella decided to go to the party. At the party, Gina and Tully hid in the bathroom, preparing to try the compound they had stolen. Before they could, Ella found them and panicked when she realized they were together. A heated argument broke out among them, and in the chaos, Tully accidentally dropped the compound. Afterward, he and Gina hurriedly left, leaving Ella alone and hurt. Feeling overwhelmed, Ella grabbed a drink nearby and downed it. She then went to dance with Brian, hoping to make Tully jealous, though Tully seemed completely indifferent. Soon after, Brian tried to make a move on another girl in the bathroom, but Ella suddenly ran in, feeling very sick. The other girl quickly left while Brian gave Ella a bit of water, but Ella ended up vomiting on Brian's shoes. Ella insulted Brian and told him to leave, then collapsed on the floor. A few seconds later, Ella received a message from Gina wanting to talk, but Ella ignored it. Instead, she filled the bathtub with cold water, hoping to cool her feverish body. Meanwhile, in the living room, Tully finally realized he had lost the compound. As he tried to search for it, Solomon and his thugs found him and chased him through the house. Tully managed to sneak into the bathroom, but the thugs soon found them. Ella hid underwater while Tully was beaten until he admitted that he had lost the compound. After the group left to search the house, Ella resurfaced and told Tully that she had taken control of the compound. Tully ran to inform Solomon, but when he returned, Ella was already gone. They didn't believe Tully, insisting no one could hold their breath for that long. Suddenly, Tully drew a gun, and Spider quickly tackled him, causing the gun to discharge accidentally. Tully passed out from excessive blood loss, and Solomon hastily wrapped the wound with a makeshift tourniquet while the others continued the search. Spider shouted that the police were coming, causing everyone at the party to panic and flee. After everyone left, Tully began to regain consciousness and noticed Ella hiding in the ceiling. Ella landed perfectly, and Tully saw strange spots on her arm, but he assumed it was just a reaction to the compound they had tried. Since Solomon had locked the door before leaving, Ella, angry, punched the door and surprised herself with the huge hole she created. When Ella tried to leave the bathroom, she found that the thugs were still guarding the front door. She went back and used her newfound strength to break through the skylight in the bathroom. Ella and Tully, who had previously taken the AI remedy, climbed out onto the roof to try and escape. The noise on the roof caught the thugs' attention, and Ella immediately jumped to the neighboring building. Tully tried to follow, but due to his injury, he slipped. Ella easily reached out and caught him, as her hands were now incredibly sticky. This scene was witnessed by Gina, who was on the street and quickly ran around the house to find them. However, as the two continued trying to escape, Tully slipped again and fell, while Ella jumped after him. When Gina arrived, she found Tully lifeless and assumed Ella was responsible for his death. Gina immediately called the police, while Ella ran off again to avoid the thugs. Ella jumped over a fence and managed to reach the street, but she eventually collapsed right in front of Brian's car. Brian picked her up just before the police arrived. A mysterious man who had been watching Solomon earlier now observed everything and learned about Ella. At Brian's apartment, Brian tried to approach Ella while she was still unconscious. When Ella woke up and punched Brian to get away from him, Brian noticed claw marks on Ella's elbow that seemed to be hidden beneath her skin. Terrified, Brian fled, while Ella went to the bathroom and realized the strange spots on her body weren't disappearing even after washing. Her claws re-emerged, and this time, Ella cut them off with scissors. Ella rushed to the hospital to draw attention with the strange colors on her face. The nurse who saw her assumed Ella was gravely ill and needed to be quarantined, then called security. However, Ella started running and hid in a patient's room, climbing the walls with her sticky hands and concealing herself on the ceiling. As the guards passed, Ella told the girl in the room to stay quiet, and the girl said nothing. After the guards left, Ella gave the girl all the AI drugs she had. Meanwhile, Eric received a report about Tully's death and learned that he had sent someone to keep an eye on them. Brian, who told the police about Ella's claws, made Eric even more intrigued to learn more about her. Solomon and Spider arrived at Brian's apartment and found Ella's claw marks in the sink. Eventually, Ella found Gina, who immediately ran upon seeing her. Ella chased after Gina and tackled her to the ground, trying to explain that she needed help. Gina finally let her into her apartment, and Ella saw herself in the mirror, shocked at the worsening condition of her skin, not to mention her nails beginning to fall off. A strong hunger suddenly overwhelmed her, and Ella grabbed a burger from Gina's fridge before checking her phone. Since the thugs had Tully's phone, Ella sent a text to Tully's number, asking what they wanted. When the topic of betrayal came up, an argument broke out between Gina and Ella. Ella revealed that her entire life had been a lie and admitted she saw Gina as her only true friend, though she eventually realized that wasn't true. In response, Gina pointed out that Ella could sometimes be mean and hurt others with her behavior. When the microwave beeped, Ella angrily gripped the door so hard it tore off. At that moment, Solomon called, and Ella agreed to meet later. Gina wanted to call the police, but Ella stopped her in a somewhat aggressive manner, making Gina realize she was genuinely afraid of her own friend. Meanwhile, in Luxembourg, Eric's men searched for Lazarus in an abandoned building. However, all they found was a tablet being used for a call. There was a message for Eric on the device, mocking him for lacking the resources to continue developing the AI drug and warning him that competition was approaching. Hearing this, Eric immediately called his father to request more time to finalize the new formula, but his father only gave him 3 days. Back to Ella, She was eating raw meat while Gina tried to track Tully's phone. Before leaving to meet Solomon, Ella told Gina that once this was all over, she never wanted to see her again. Moments later, Ella met Solomon, who successfully distracted her, giving Spider the chance to surprise her from behind and abduct her. Gina, watching from a distance, immediately followed them using the phone tracker. Solomon and Spider brought Ella to their house, which turned out to be under surveillance by Eric's men. Inside the house, Ella was tied to a chair, but she easily grew her claws again and managed to break free. On the table, there were several pieces of meat, and without hesitation, Ella ate them raw. When Solomon and Spider appeared at the door, Ella didn't hesitate to grab a knife and spit acid at them, burning Spider's hand. Suddenly, the police arrived and started banging on the door. Solomon ordered Spider to grab the last sample of the compound and flee. Solomon then tried to convince Ella to trust him, but they were interrupted by the police, who stormed in and arrested Ella, believing her responsible for the attack on Brian and Tully's death. Some officers also discovered the lab and arrested Solomon, assuming he was the mastermind behind it all. Gina, watching her friend being taken away, could only remain silent, unsure of who to trust anymore. In jail, Ella touched her neck and realized the strange spots had spread to her ears. Her ears suddenly fell off, and new, oddly shaped ones began to grow. Ella covered her head with her hood, while Solomon explained that his goal was to develop an AI treatment alternative accessible to everyone, regardless of social status. Their conversation was interrupted when Eric arrived. He revealed that Solomon used to work for Athera. Eric closely observed the changes happening to Ella, and then paid to have both Ella and Solomon released from prison. They were taken away in his car, which was, of course, followed by Spider. Later, at Athera's research facility, Eric sedated Ella so she could undergo several tests. Ella's DNA had mutated, meaning she was no longer human. Eric then went to the basement, where one of his men was torturing Solomon. After listing all the crimes that could land Solomon in prison, Eric asked him to return to working with his company, but Solomon refused. Solomon was determined to ensure the drug he was developing could be available to everyone, regardless of class. Eric disagreed. He argued that humanity itself had ruined the environment, so he had to decide who deserved to survive. When Ella woke up, she felt something was off. Her face was already half mutated, and she immediately knew her body was no longer the same. Eric casually explained that her transformation allowed her to breathe in polluted air and that her body now produced enzymes that could be used to create more AI drugs. Eric began manipulating her, claiming that he had tried contacting her father but found no trace of him. Additionally, Solomon refused to cooperate because he didn't want to share the credit. If Ella agreed to undergo more tests to find the drug formula Eric was seeking, he promised to return her to her original condition once everything was done. Trusting Eric's promise, Ella eventually signed the papers he presented before being sedated again. When Ella woke up, she could hear Eric's conversation with his father. Even though his father was outside the room and separated by thick glass, Ella could catch every word. She quickly realized that Eric had no intention of performing simple tests on her, but actually planned to extract enzymes from her body through a high-risk procedure that could kill her. Her father had already filed a missing person report, but Eric had cunningly bribed the police to avoid suspicion. Furious, Ella began pounding on the glass, forcing Eric to release sleeping gas into her room to put her back to sleep. Moments later, Spider arrived at the facility using a company van he had stolen, pretending to deliver stock shipments. Since the security guards were too busy watching videos, he managed to get through without any issues. Meanwhile, 2 doctors entered Ella's room to prepare her for the procedure, only to find that her restraints had already been broken. Suddenly, Ella appeared and started beating them until they told her where Solomon was being held. Security finally noticed the chaos and immediately activated the alarms. Acting quickly, Ella dragged one of the doctors toward a door and used his fingerprint to unlock it so she could escape. Ella ran toward the basement, but when she heard approaching guards, she quickly hid on the ceiling. As the guard got close, Ella sprayed acid onto his face before taking him down. Ella then continued her search for Solomon, who explained that he wanted the drug formula to be accessible to everyone without exception. Solomon said that Ella's mutation was an unavoidable side effect. Angry, Ella shoved him against the wall and asked how this was supposed to be better than just wearing a mask. Meanwhile, Eric was at a private airport picking up Max, who was already annoyed because his father was late. When they arrived at the facility, Eric heard the news that Ella had escaped, so he left Max with Angela before joining the search team. Angela, unwilling to babysit, left Max in Eric's office where Max found Ella's locket. The guards moved toward the tunnels and Solomon pointed out a vent to Ella. With the help of her sticky hands and super strength, Ella carried Solomon up into the vent, and they managed to escape before the guards could spot them. At the same time, Spider set up several bombs and sent a message to the company warning about explosions set to occur in 9 minutes. Angela informed Eric that they needed to evacuate immediately, but Eric dismissed the message as a distraction and didn't believe the bombs were real. After sneaking through the tunnels, Ella and Solomon made it to a laboratory. There, Solomon used a hologram to explain that the key ingredient for the AI drug was extracted from a specific dragonfly found only in Africa. This dragonfly was the only species unaffected by polluted air, and now Ella had become one of them. Unfortunately, the dragonflies had gone extinct due to Aethera's production, which had destroyed the ecosystem, and the synthetic materials they developed didn't work. This was why Eric wanted to harvest Ella to obtain the enzymes from her body. At that moment, one of the bombs exploded, and Ella and Solomon started running again in a panic. When they heard someone approaching, Solomon quickly restrained the person and knocked them to the ground, only to discover it was Spider hiding. Suddenly, toxic gas began filling the basement, forcing them to rush upstairs and find shelter in a bathroom. In one of the stalls, Ella found Max, who was also trying to hide from the bombs. With a smile, Max called her a fairy, and they played for a moment. Max felt a bit comforted and gave her his locket as a gift. After that, they kept running through the building until Eric appeared in front of them with a gun drawn, blocking their path. Solomon and Spider managed to avoid him, but Ella quickly used Max as a shield. She pretended to threaten to harm the child with her mutation if Eric didn't back off. However, Eric didn't back down and kept shooting. With extraordinary agility, Ella managed to dodge the shots just in time. They hurried to the garage and jumped into a van, trying to escape as quickly as possible. The company guards began firing, but Eric reminded them they needed Ella alive. In the end, they only aimed at the van's tires as it sped toward the gate. The van eventually flipped and landed on its roof, but when the guards approached, they only found Spider inside. Meanwhile, Solomon and Ella had already dashed into the forest. Using her new mutated claws, Ella tore through the fence to escape. The guards all chased after them, leaving only one to watch Spider. Cleverly, Spider pretended to be in pain and then surprised the guard, knocking him unconscious and creating an opportunity to escape. Finally, Ella and Solomon reached a bridge. Solomon urged her to jump into the river to escape safely. Ella hesitated to leave him, but Solomon showed her his mutated hand. He admitted to taking just a small dose of the compound out of fear and wasn't sure he would survive. Solomon handed Ella the last sample and told her to find Lazarus to complete the drug. Before jumping into the river, Ella gave her locket to Solomon as a keepsake. Ella leapt and managed to escape. Shortly after, the guards arrived and captured Solomon. Eric coldly declared that he would force Solomon to create new mutants. A while later, Gina found an envelope at her door containing a decorative listening device she used to share with Ella. That night, Spider hacked into the TV channels to tell the whole world they needed to change, or they would die. Meanwhile, Ella's mutation continued to progress, and she now had wings. Using those wings, Ella managed to fly and find Lazarus, who turned out to be Angela.